Solo mining is the embodiment of the original dream, a defiant act of individual sovereignty where one person, one node, and one miner take a stand against centralized control. We don't just mine for profit, we mine for principle. We mine for ourselves and for each other and for the unyielding spirit at Bitcoin's core. Join us as we dig in and hold the line. This is the Home Mining Podcast. Hello, Bitcoin home miners. TwoSats here, and I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors before we jump into another amazing episode here on the Home Mining Podcast. First up, if you want to stack sats the right way in the US or Canada, you've got to check out today's sponsor, Bitcoin Well. It's a fully non-custodial platform. It's straight to your own wallet using on-chain or Lightning. They never custody your funds. That's the way it should be. So use our link to join Bitcoin Well. You'll also earn bonus points with every Bitcoin buy you make when you sign up using our link. And those points are actually redeemable for coin tosses into their Bitcoin wishing well, which gets you free sats. You can even win up to 1 million sats in the wishing well, which is amazing. Or you can save up your points and use them for a Bitaxe Gamma from Solo Satoshi. So just go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen or hit the link in the description and join me on Bitcoin Well to start stacking sats today. Now, during this episode, have your Lightning wallets ready because we'll also be giving away some free sats courtesy of Bitcoin Well. And if you're ready to go ahead and start your Bitcoin home mining journey with us, go ahead and grab a Bitaxe Gamma or a Nerd QX++ from the Solo Satoshi store using our link or by scanning the QR code you see on the screen now. Listeners of the Home Mining Podcast that use this link have access to an exclusive discount code. All you got to do is go to the store using our link, put whatever you want in your cart, and when you go to checkout, use code TwoSats, the number 2, SATS, and you can snag yourself a nice little discount on your purchase. We really appreciate you supporting the podcast. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, and let's dig in to this next episode. Hello and welcome back to the Home Mining Podcast by Solo Satoshi. I'm your host, TwoSats, and today I'm joined by the creators of some of the most beloved home mining devices in the market today, such as the Nano 3S and the Avalon Q. The home mining enthusiasts love them, the heat punks love them, and today we're excited to have them on the podcast for a good chat. Welcome, Gwyn and Leo, to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Really excited to have you guys on because everybody in the home mining community loves the devices. The heat punks love the devices, specifically the Avalon Q. I know that is an extremely popular device that we actually just got in stock in the store, and they're flying off the shelves, and people love them because there is really nothing better that you can just buy and plug it in and have that kind of power on a standard 110, 120 volt circuit.
Thanks. Yeah. So glad you love the products. Really glad to hear it. I know from my background, obviously I'm not your typical heat punk or someone who would be in Bitcoin mining. I'm not the stereotypical person, but what I love is, just as you said, it's so great to be able to have something that you can just plug into the wall. You don't have to know anything. It did most of it for me. Otherwise, I have a Nano 3 at my feet that I run all winter long. And it's so nice that I could just plug it in. It practically connected itself to my network. And then I can use the app on my phone to see what I'm doing with that. So, as you said, it's just so easy and it makes it so accessible to, you don't have to be an electrician or somebody who really is industrial focused to participate in Bitcoin mining.
Absolutely.
And this is the 5th year of myself with Canaan. I joined in 2021. So over the 5 years, Canaan has evolved so much. We used to be solely based in Asia, but now we have a pretty sizable team in North America. In the past, it was all industrial level miners, and most of the miners are sold directly to end users. Channels weren't either not relevant or non-existent in some of these countries. But since we moved over, I believe about a year ago to home mining industry, we realized it's very hard, very important for us to set up, both marketing, and connections with retail, and with channels, right? So we work with many resellers. We work with people who test and post their experience online with our machines, and we learn a lot from them, right? So I guess the whole company is evolving into a consumer electronics, so to speak, company, but also with a very interesting, geeky, evangelist culture, which we had kept for the past over 13 years.
Yeah, that's it's definitely two different markets, right? That industrial mining market and then the home mining market, two very distinct and separate communities. And I imagine, marketing and business and the whole thing, the supply chain and whatnot. So it's so great to see what you guys are doing in the last year or so, really pushing into the home mining market, because people love to be able to have options, and I think the Q in particular has been a great option for people that want some of that industrial power, um, but they don't have a dedicated 240 volt circuit, or noise levels. Like, there's just so many things that the Q does right that they wouldn't be able to run an S21 at home, right? So the Q is just such a great product fit for so many people. So really, really love that you have that out there. So you actually, Leo, touched on something there. I was going to start the podcast off with this because it's definitely one of the most compelling and interesting questions possible. Just joking, but I've heard many people try to pronounce the name of the company, and I've heard just people butcher it, and then I've heard what you just said there. So you pronounced it Canaan. Is that the correct pronunciation? We have a chance to set the record straight once and for all.
I always tell people you can pronounce in any way you like. Our founders pronounce them as Canaan. That's why we follow that pronunciation. But I've heard Canaan, Canaan. I think they all make sense. I think one of the reasons why our founder chose this word as the company was because they wanted to protect Bitcoin. Back then, in 2013, I would say the whole reason for him to drop from his PhD degree and started this project was to protect Bitcoin, because he believed in decentralization. He wanted to make sure the technology in ASIC doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So he wanted to make sure the machines go to people across the globe, so everybody got a chance to try out it. So I guess that was the first decision he made with the team, that none of the Avalon team members would keep any miner for self mining. But it was like 14 years ago already. But that was a pretty amazing story.
Awesome. I would love to get into a whole host of topics with you guys, but I would love to just warm the audience up to you a bit and just learn a little bit more about the two of you and your personal journeys into the company and into Bitcoin and into mining. So why don't you just start off? We'll start off with Gwyn. Just I'd love to know a bit more about your own relationship with Bitcoin. Are you a holder, a miner? Do you run your own hardware at home? I know you said you have a Nano 3S there. A little bit about how you got into this world.
Yeah, so I'm not a natural fit. Leo found me about a year and a half ago. My background is technology. I come more from a semiconductor hardware side of the world. So in talking to Leo about Canaan, I was really comfortable with the company because it's a semiconductor manufacturer. We just make an ASIC that just does Bitcoin mining, put it into a machine, and send it out to our customers. So it was the semiconductor part of it that made me comfortable. But then since then, obviously, I'd had to learn a lot about Bitcoin mining, about the technology, and about, as you said, I have my little Nano 3. Mine isn't even a Nano 3S. Mine is the first generation Nano 3. But it does what I needed to do. And since I'm not sort of or didn't start out being, really Bitcoin savvy before I joined the company, I needed something that I could feel really comfortable with. But so Leo got me comfortable with the company, comfortable with the idea of Bitcoin. Um, but what really sort of made me join the company was, as Leo alluded to, it was kind of NG, our founder, uh, the reason that the company exists today is because he felt so passionately about protecting the network, making sure that the network remained safe. And the best way to do that was to form a company and send his machines out around the globe so that nobody could take control of the network. And I love that passion. I love, the commitment and dedication that he had back then, which is still part of our culture today. So that's what brought me to Canaan and to join Leo.
And I had a legal background, so I was born and raised in China. I went to Beijing for a law degree. I also co-founded one of the earliest Chinese e-commerce websites. But then we went back and did a master's degree in law again, and started my career in a law firm called Wang Case. I went to Columbia Law School for a second degree. And then I passed New York bar and practiced in New York, and then later back in Hong Kong in 2011. I worked in Hong Kong for 2 other years, or most of my work encompasses public companies, securities, M&A, venture capital, financing. But then I realized that legal wasn't really my passion. So I left the firm and joined a startup in Shenzhen with headquarters in Illinois. And then I worked there as a general counsel and also VP of finance for 4 years, and then started with another company managing its global portfolio. Also, they're listed companies in different stock exchanges. During COVID, I found it was very hard because I couldn't get back to visit my family in California. So I wanted to exit China once and for all, at which time Canaan found me. And we had a conversation, and I joined Canaan. Back then, Canaan was a Beijing company. I went to their Beijing office. And I talked to most of the team leaders about his past and future. Then I went back to the U.S. and started Canaan's IR practice and capital market practices. I also helped them set up their U.S. marketing and sales forces. Getting to know everybody was quite a journey. But I'm very excited, and I feel, people always say, 1 year in crypto is like 10 years in other industries. Like I've been in this company for 5 years, and I've already seen, one bull market, 2 bear market, 2 bull markets and 2 bear markets already. So I guess this is very exciting. I'm really happy to be here and share a piece of my story.
That's awesome. Great to have you. And yeah, 2 bulls, 2 bears. So you've definitely been through it. And then whatever it is that we have going on right now, nobody really knows. Personally think it's a little bit of a bear market right now. And that's fine. That's a great opportunity for people to be plugging in mining devices. We had that negative difficulty adjustment, which for the home miner is a huge boost in opportunity if you are thinking long term, right? To plug in a mining device and stack more sats. Some of these industrial heavyweights are curtailing their output, and so that gives you a better opportunity as a home miner to be able to stack more. So I think that's an exciting opportunity for the home miners.
Totally agree. I guess it's a very, very different clientele. in this industry, we receive questions about APIs, about our UI, about noise level, about some people talking about the noise and smell and color and how our screen looks shiny. You don't get these questions from industrial customers.
No.
They we try to make this more user friendly. You just need to scan a barcode, connect to the to website. And in the beginning it was really hard for us. So last year when we were trying to introduce home mining, it was very hard to find a mining pool that were willing to connect us, because they saw this market was too small. So we had to in the beginning subsidize the mining pool for running these miners, and use some smaller ones. But then when things getting better, when our machines getting a little more attention, I think the mining pools are willing to take them. And we also opened some of our software and firmware, so that people can run solo mining on it. They could customize it to some extent. So I guess we're getting a handle on this to understand how to fit into the community. And now our goal is to get it out from the typical home miners, and try to introduce them to people who never heard of Bitcoin mining or home mining. So I guess there's a bigger challenge, because if you are trying to sell your machines to people who didn't understand wallets or didn't understand how to set up, you have to make it even easier for them. So we're still trying to get our head around it. But we're very excited because home heating market is huge, and we do want to introduce our machines to people so they can have more control of their home, and also on their power bills.
Yep, those are two great topics that I do want to jump into with you while you've brought them up. And I think it was Tyler Stevens, who is one of the top guys at the Space Denver there, where the Heat Punk Summit is being hosted. He said if 1% of the comfort heating market came to Bitcoin mining, we would add 1 zettahash to the network right there. That's at 1% of that home comfort heating market.
Wow.
So that is a massive influx of hash rate that would come online with such an insignificant amount, percentage-wise, of people making that switch. So I think you guys are definitely in at the right time, and sort of pouring your focus over in the right place if you can contribute to making that happen.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Although I think Rome isn't built in a day. I think different countries have different ways to heat their houses. In Northern Europe, people are not as handy and as US. In Asia, people have centralized heating systems. In some of the rural areas, for example, in Finland, we have industrial level heating projects, and that provide hot water to the providers of heat to the homes. And in the US, it's more individualized. Every home has its own heating systems, whether it's a gas system or electric system, or boiler heater. I guess it's always a challenge to find the right channel and to find the right partners, or the community to accept this concept, especially when it comes down to serious heating. When it comes down to home heating on water, you want to make sure they can be serviced, they can be installed, and they can fit in the system, because usually people just install a boiler for 30 years and don't want to kind of check it out. This is very very different from like a small gadgets that you can put in at home. So yeah, like conceptually, I agree with Tyler Stevens that this is a huge market with a big potential. But on the other hand, when we try to tap into this industry, you want to trying to find the lower hanging fruit where you can just get out a machine and that channel deal with it. when it comes down to customization, like swimming pool heating, or like even more seriously, daily heating on water. You do you do have a lot of other issues to handle.
Absolutely.
And I think go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
So in our travels, Leo and I have talked to a lot of people, and there's quite a spectrum of people, individuals who are interested in home mining and that sort of thing. And the spectrum is so broad. We've met people who just want to protect the network. If they're not interested in stacking sats necessarily, but if they do, that's a great benefit. But they're just committed to protecting the network. Then we've met other people in other places that, the heating costs or the installation costs are so high that they're not a lot of options in a lot of places. So when we talk to people, some of them have been like, we just had a heat pump installed in our house. It cost us 35,000 euro. So if you think about that, you don't have to make that kind of investment. You can buy an Avalon Mini 3 and just sort of put it in your house. And the way some houses and apartments or flats in Europe are set up, the insulation is really good. And you could use a Mini 3 to heat your entire small flat or apartment. So, there's different ends. Some people really are into it because of the home mining aspect. And, if it heats your house, that's great, but they want to mine. So there's a broad range of people who we're solving problems for, if you will, for whatever they're interested in, whatever their ultimate goal is. It's something that now people can do it. You don't have to buy an industrial miner, and we're serving more than just that crap.
And this is also a reflection of our visions and our, the challenges we have to meet in this industry, because as you said, the spectrum is very wide. We need to, on the one hand, be very humble and open and try to collect as much info as possible from the world, but on the other hand, we have to kind of distinguish the smaller opportunities and the real opportunities, and try to kind of allocate our resources to focus on the ones that can really become a business model. I guess nanos and Qs have already proved its usefulness, and if you look at it, many of the Q and nanos users are very happy with its usage, and also the ease of use. But it was also a community that used to host their machines with third parties, and was very tired of dealing with these intermediaries because they had no control of their cloud mining hash rate. But these machines provided them with an easier way to own the asset and own the infrastructure. So I guess that's how we help them. Going forward, if we wanted to tap into the more traditional market, where consumers can just try to plug them in and start to reduce their power bills, we need to find ways to convert Bitcoin into maybe fiat currency and subsidize their usage in more like a subscription or SaaS service. But that is yet to be modified. So I guess we were very young. We were still a very young company, especially in this industry. It's just a little over a year. So we just try to learn more and talk and get feedback from people. So we try to make this more startup like, even though the whole company has been listed for over 5 years. So this is very, very important for us.
Well, I think you will find that the mining space, specifically the home mining space, is going to be an easy place for you to get a lot of feedback, right? Because people love to tinker with their devices. That's the whole open source side of the movement, which you guys are exploring with some of your firmware or your software, I believe, which I want to get into. And you're going to have, those are going to be your best resources, right? Is it the everyday person that is running this, right? I've tried to get my family members to run a mining device for over a year, and I finally convinced my father to do it when I showed him and told him about the Q. So everything else was like, no, it's too complicated. I don't understand. I can't even charge my phone correctly, this kind of stuff. And so, as somebody who runs, a single board S19 here, like I'm familiar with all these different devices, but somebody like him who, has some operator troubles with the most basic of technology, he loves the idea of, oh, there's an app on my phone. I have to do very minimal setup. It's something I can jump on a call with him and walk him through in, 5 to 10 minutes. And he's up stacking sats. He's heating his house in Canada. He's offsetting his heating costs, things like that, right? So there is, like Gwyn said, such a huge spectrum of people. And I think that's the most important point, is that no one thing is right for everybody, but there is something for everybody. Whether it's the Nano 3S, which I think is such a great introduction to Bitcoin mining for the home miner. It's something you give your family members as a Christmas present or something like that, where they can dip their toes in. They can see is this for me? There's that benefit of heat. So it's not just the stacking the sats or the solo mining. They might have no interest in that at all, but they have a space heater. So why would they not have a space heater that potentially pays them? So I think there's that huge spectrum. The education part of, I can plug in a $300 device and I'm involved now, right? You don't have to get a $3,000, $4,000 S21. You can get a $300 device, a $400 device, and now you're starting to learn. And I find a lot of people get a lot more excited about picking up something more expensive like a Q when they've had an experience with a less expensive device that they can sort of learn their way around. Is that sort of what you guys have noticed as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think even if we hadn't pushed out Nano and collected the data from market and kind of nurtured the community, we wouldn't be as successful as today with the Qs. What's your idea, Green?
Yeah, I agree. And I guess it depends on what part of the community you're talking to, but for sure. And what I really like about it is, like you mentioned, you people aren't really comfortable getting an S21, but so our technology uses the same chips that are in our machine. So the same chips that are in A15 are in these home mining products. So it's a serious thing if you want to be serious about it, in an easier form factor. And I think that's pretty powerful. I think that gets a lot of people excited, like, okay, I'm not ready to buy an industrial machine, but these machines are doing real work. The Avalon Q does real work. So I think that's, you can't make it easier for people than that.
Fantastic. Yeah, great points. And I wanted to ask you, Leo, because you mentioned subsidizing a pool early on. Can you share more about that? Because a lot of people, when they do the setup, they wonder why the default pool is, I believe it's the F2 pool. What's the decision behind that, and how did that all come to be? And then I guess walk us through a little bit more about what the plans are in the future in terms of, like, is customization going to be a focus for you guys, allowing people to be on whatever pool they want, solo mining, pooled mining, and point their miners as they please? Is that sort of on your radar as something that's important for the home mining market?
Yeah. So for the record, we're not subsidizing F2 pool for this. F2 pool is a very big pool. It used to be one of the largest in, it used to be the largest, claimly, in the world. When choosing a mining pool, we have a history in the industry. People know us. So we might be a little better to kind of negotiate with pools on their offerings. But everybody is welcome to change the default settings to a pool they like. F2 pools have been working with us, and we like F2 pool because they are independent, right? As you can appreciate, one of our competitors have secretly invested into a lot of smaller pools. So it's a bit difficult to find a pool that has that kind of independency. and also there are pools who are not as responsible. I think F2 pool is not a U.S. pool. That's why maybe some of the customers in the U.S. feel a little bit weird about it. But to be fair, the U.S. mining pool only became the concept of it. It's like in the past 3 years, right? So I do think now it's very flexible for people to change their the mining settings with an app. I think it's much easier than setting up through industrial platform. But yeah, so I guess in the beginning we could not work a big pool like F2. We had to work with smaller pools. But that was like to get it out, just to make it like possible for people. But now we are flexible, and I think that really adds value because the first generation of Nano 3 received the most comment is about the mining pool setting and the freedom to run solo on these machines.
And what influenced that decision for allowing that flexibility to go solo mining? Because a lot of people do love that, right? You either run it as a pool mining setup. Some people have enough devices where they run a little bit of both, right? They solo mine and they pool mine. And some people are exclusively lottery mining, solo mining. That's what they want to do, is they want that lottery ticket, so to speak, every 10 minutes. So what influenced you guys? Was it just like feedback that you heard over time of, hey, we really want to be solo mining?
Yeah. So solo mining wasn't a function for the first generation of Nano 3. And we did that on purpose. I thought the reason was that, we didn't want to just focus on people who are running solo mining machines. We want to test the water and found out if a real serious mining would be possible. Is there the market for the serious mining community instead of just lottery runners? Because we thought that would be the goal. Because you got enough offerings on solo mining. So you got Bitaxes, you got other smaller offerings, and we thought it'll be too small market for us to run several hundred terahash of machines. So we decided to not run solo mining in the beginning. But then when we got the feedback and we collect enough data and we have more confidence in that market, we open that function for people, because you got to appreciate an option, and we wanted to offer that option to people.
Fantastic. And then speaking of optionality, maybe sort of speaking about the difference between the markets that you guys are addressing, some of the stuff that you guys put out is now being open sourced to an extent, right? Would you be able to just sort of lay that out here? What's currently open sourced, and are there any plans to open source additional things in the near future? And what does that all sort of hinge upon? What's the criteria for you guys personally to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to open source this next component?
So open source is the idea that is embedded in the blood of this company. I think in the beginning, our founder started his design in as early as 2012, 2011, I would even say. So he started with FPGA mining solutions, and he was kind of freely giving the industry his design, so everybody could use the FPGA design to do their own mining hardware. Of course, to enable people to do that, you need to have chips, right? You have to give people control chips and hash chips. So that was one of the reasons. And after 1 year of Avalon project, for a brief time period, the Avalon team decided to kind of become a purely play semiconductor provider. So I think in 2014, we decided that we wanted to just use the semiconductor provided people, and people can manufacture all the mining machines and hardware powered by Avalon. But then they soon realized that that was a wrong decision. Because back then in China, there was so many people wanted to get a hand on the mining machine because they saw they print money. So for profit, a lot of people try to get machines, and they need this machine to run and to work. And back then, the network hash rate fluctuated very, very much. So one day's difference could be life or death for people. So when you ship these chips to people, time is the most important factor in making your investment back. And unfortunately, a lot of the manufacturers could not deliver on time. So when they call their customers that we are powered by Avalon, and they fail in delivery, Avalon's reputation was hurt. Because if you want to be a semiconductor provider, you need to get paid, right? And then people, hungry customers will look at you and say, "Hey, is this your authorized retailer, or is authorized manufacturer?" So we thought that wasn't the way to go, and we went back and designed a second generation and third generation Avalon. So that being said, trying to empower the community is always the way this company runs, and how this company's people believe in. I mean, competition in this industry is cutting throat. You got Bitmain, MicroBT, and soon Bitdeer. People who wanted to sell machines for revenue, and just to quite expand. So I guess for us to keep that belief intact is pretty challenging. But we still try to open source our software and firmware to people. Like last year, we tried to open source everything so that people could use our machines, could design their own machines in different form factors, whether it's home use or industry use with our solution. But then, when we work on that project for almost a year, we realized that there are some security burdens, and our responsibility as a public company that is important, as equally important to us, that we could not let 100% of our software and firmware to be open to the public. That doesn't mean we don't want it. It's we still try to do it for many of our customers, especially they have a big order for customization. We open more to them. It's just like it's a community, and also the market need to have a sizable effect on our revenues for us to make it happen. Like if it's a one miner, two miner, it's very hard for us to service it, because if we sell chips, and people use these chips to build their machines, and if there are some incidents happening in the process, we feel we should be reliable for that, and we don't want, our legal doesn't want us to get involved into that kind of responsibility. So it's a complex process. But we're committed to open source, and we have been running AI chips for a very long time on RISC-V, which is an open source standard. I think we ran it for almost 7 years, and we recently decided to get out of that business because the market was too competitive, and we couldn't incur meaningful revenue from it. But we used to be one of the largest open source chip provider on the AI chips side in Asia. So that is like a extended answer to a very simple question.
No, that's great, because when the announcement first came out about you guys open sourcing parts of the stack, I think a lot of people were very excited, and then there was also a lot of criticism of, well, to what degree, like how meaningful is it? How much more will they decide to open source, right? So there's always that internal debate amongst people. But the problem with that is those are people that aren't educated about what you guys might know, right? What you guys at the company behind the scenes actually know. So that's why I thought it would maybe be helpful and important to just get it straight from the top as to what's happened, what might potentially happen, and because people definitely love building on it. You see a lot of the people using what was open sourced to integrate it with Home Assistant. I don't know if you've seen any of that personally, but they're integrating it with Home Assistant, which is another open source technology stack, and you can control your Avalon or your Nano through Home Assistant. And so I've had a gentleman on here also from the space, Dylan, who is sort of the brain behind that kind of combination, and his wife hates the noise, so when she leaves, he's got it queued up on his phone that the miners fire up, and when the garage door opens and his wife drives the car in, things start to come down. So he's very committed to the wife annoyance factor, as we call it, the WAF.
This is hilarious. Yeah, we are supportive to that. Like we help support some of the smart home standard, open source standards. So on that part, we are very supportive.
Fantastic. And in terms of the chips, we were just talking about how cutthroat of an industry this is. It's very brutal. There's a very small conglomerate of companies that are sort of in this market that have this technology. Is that something that will ever be available to people that want to build at home, or that's the chips are going to stay proprietary and sort of kept close?
So one thing about the semiconductor industry is that it's maybe different from people's idea, is that it's very, very expensive to develop chips. We usually spend tens of millions of dollars in one single tape out, and tape out is the last step before manufacturing. So you provide your design to your foundry. Foundry is either Samsung and TSMC or Intel. If Intel ever does its foundry, and they manufacture a so-called mask, which is to move your design from algorithm and computing into a real world, real physical world, and use that mask to manufacture a big wafer, right? So then you put the wafers into OSACs, or testing and manufacturing supply chains, and cut them into small chips. Well, it's a little more complicated than what I just described, but that's how you spend tens of millions of dollars on before you can actually buy any of these chips, right? So that's part of the R&D cost. And also you have R&D engineers on both software side and hardware side that you have to keep as a team. So that competition is actually in terms of technology, in terms of capital, and also in terms of persistence. And I mean, persistence is because we have a big cycle, a very cyclical industry here, which is Bitcoin, right? So if Bitcoin goes up to the wheels, then people might be able to make money from it. But if Bitcoin stay as low, the mining economics isn't great, and the machines will become very hard to sell. So over times, us and our competitors all lost money in the bear markets,
Sure.
and then hundreds of millions of money in bear market, and in the bull market you have to make it back, right? You have to try to sell them for profit, or at least for revenue. So it is a very hard industry. And the thing we look at it is the number of chips on the machines are directly connected to the sale price of these machines, right? And that sale price is also correlated to the home miners' sale price, because people look at them at the hash rate. You have 100 terahash, you have 1 terahash, and the price between these two are correlated. So to us, it's more about a size. Size doesn't matter in this industry, by the way. The size of the volume and the potential revenue you can generate from selling hardware, right? So if you're talking about a miner, take our friend Bitaxe, for example. Bitaxe recycle chips and put them into very small niche hash rate. Is more education to me. It's more educational than practical. These are great projects. Scott is a great guy, but these projects don't provide meaningful revenue for a company, right? It's more like a foundation based. For us, it's because we are for profit, we're a public company. We have to make meaningful businesses, and we have to put our R&D resources into projects that they can move the needle, right? So if it's a big miner who wanted to design a interesting project, and we did that many times, for a very special infrastructure. If the order is big enough, we can help them with that. But the revenue from that project has a big connection, as I said, correlation with the number of chips we produce. So it's less of availability of chips, but more of the possibility to generate revenue from that order.
The economics don't make a ton of sense to focus on getting chips to the home mining market, basically, is what you're saying?
Yeah, for all markets, people wanted to. It's like if you wanted to change your power bills, you need to have a sizable project. I think Q size is like the sweet spot for a regular home, right? You can't get it too big, because if it's too big, it becomes a hazardous device for the home power system. But it can't be too small, because if it's too small, it's more like a gadget. You have to have something in. It's not big enough, but it's not too small. It's not too big, but you have to have something that fit into 110 volt, and maybe 30 to 60 watts power plug, and it's safe, but it's also sizable, so people can either generate revenue from mining or offset some of the power bills without having to worry about breaking your power circuit.
Absolutely. Just circling back to that a bit, would you ever? So you mentioned the Bitaxe project, which something that we're obviously huge supporters of, and we're directly involved in here at Solo Satoshi, and with Scott, and I'm sure he'll love that you gave him some love there. So make sure he hears that. But I'm sure a lot of the people that build Bitaxes or Nerdaxes would love to use Avalon chips instead of BM1370s. Is that something that Canaan would ever, look to support or encourage, or preferably not?
I'm not in the place to answer that question, because they haven't brought to me. But I and Scott have been talking about it. We are running some ideas. Scott told me it's a huge market with huge potential. I ain't seeing that happening yet. But conceptually, we're very supportive to his efforts. So if in the future we can help, without straining our R&D resources, I think we'll be very happy to do it. By the way, I'll be on the same panel with Scott next week in Heat Punk. So we might be talking about it a little.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Oh, great. So this can act as a little preview of what might be spoken about on the panel. Well, I personally really love that you guys are taking active participation in that. You're looking to kind of pull the community, interface with the community, because I think that's really exciting. A lot of your competitors might not really be interested in doing that. And so I think that's to their detriment and to y'all's to y'all's benefit, as that you are actively getting just involved with the everyday pleb miner, as they're called, right? The everyday person that mines Bitcoin and that has an interest in this space. So respect to you guys for doing that.
Thank you. And our
Are you-
competitors were a little earlier than us in the North American regions. Like in the beginning, we were very close to North American communities, but for a while, I think it was could be because of the COVID, that kind of divided two worlds. We were late, and a lot of our machines weren't be able to sell to the U.S. When we should have, right? Because that was the booming area for the North American market. But our competitors took advantage of that. They sent people. They had channels in North America, and they kind of occupied the market. But now we're gaining more from the North American region. And I would think our machines had a much better reputation. If you ask anyone in the industry to compare our machines against our competitor machines, they will hands down say our machines is superior than our competitors in terms of durability and also our service attitude. Like recently, I saw a post. People said they bought machines from competitors, and 3 months later, the broken machine still hasn't been tendered. And there was one machine broke from the batch from Avalon, and they got service in about 10 days, right? So I guess if you focus on making your customer happy, you will certainly have a way to make them happy. It's just what's your culture? What are you looking at? Are you looking at making more money, or just to ripping off people? Are you looking at have a happy community, happy society? How much do you care about the reputation, and how much do you care to share with your customers? I guess that's the ultimate question that every company had to face.
And I think sort of from a corporate culture perspective, I mean, if you think about our founder, NG, who's our CEO still today, he comes from the community. So he brings that mindset and looks for ways, I think, to support the community. We are a company, we have to, pay to keep the lights on and do all that. But I think where he can, he looks for opportunities. And that's why, a small step is getting into the consumer mining space with products.
Well, it's something that travels fast, right? It's the service that you provide. We know firsthand how important that is at Solo Satoshi, as I'm sure you guys do there, that, delighting your customer, making it right at all costs, more or less, making sure that if something is broken, it's addressed quickly and promptly and compassionately, and it's fixed. I mean, that word travels incredibly fast. And so if your competitors are not willing to do that, or they're very selective, and you have sort of the approach of, well, we stand by our product and we're going to make it right, no matter what, for the consumer, they shouldn't have to deal with broken product or, anything like that. I think it really travels fast, especially in this really small niche of the home mining community. And on an industrial scale, I'm sure it also travels fast. And the repercussions of that, we're not talking about a $300, Nano 3S. Now we're talking about potentially millions of dollars of product, where if the reputation is good, you're going to be the go-to company. If the reputation is not so good, people will look for an alternative. And while there might currently be a bottleneck on options, I think we've seen with Proto coming out, and there are going to be more options as time goes on. This is a very young industry, and so having your company culture clearly identified and then executing on that, I think, is going to do great long-term favors for building a great brand.
Certainly.
Great.
Very well said.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you, maybe Gwyn, because you're really into the semiconductor side of things. The latest miners, like the Q, have really pushed the efficiency boundaries quite significantly. Where do you see the ceiling on things like joules per terahash improvements over the next maybe 2 or 3 product generations? I know you pour a ton of resources into R&D, so what engineering constraints are you maybe running into, and where do you see sort of the ceiling on the improvements over these next generations?
Yeah, you hear a lot, or you used to hear a lot about companies trying to get to the 5 joule per terahash level, which, the trouble with that is, this is physics, so there are limits to what can happen. The flip side to that, I always, when I say things like that, I always think, but there were limits on how fast can a human run a mile, and then there's a ceiling until suddenly there's not. So I think one of the great things about this space is that there's so much innovation going on, and there's always, all of us are fighting to be the most efficient. And I think, that fuels innovation. So that makes it exciting. I can't predict, are we going to get to 5 joules? Is it possible? I think that's probably the most exciting question. And I'm excited to hear where we go from there. Is it ever going to be broken? So,
Do you think single digit joules per terahash, maybe not 5, but single digit, is that something that is likely to be achieved in the next 5 to 10 years?
it gets harder and harder. We are currently on advanced nodes. I'm not sure how much improvement there can be, but I know there's a lot of smart minds behind this. So single digits, I don't know. I haven't seen anything in anyone's secret plans for that, but I know, I'm sure we're all striving for single digits. Leo, do you have something do you know anything I don't know?
I don't know what you know, so I don't know if I know anything that you don't know. But yeah, to address the question, single digits is the target for manufacturers, but also the cost is the other side of the spectrum. Like if you like when people talk about advanced node, they were like, when you move from 3 nanometer to 2 nanometer, your cost of manufacturing and design doubled. But then the efficiency only improved 20%. Like it is really worthwhile for the community to absorb that increased cost. So it's important to note, as Green just described, that a lot of people are putting huge effort into the manufacturing and packaging of semiconductor chips. And there will be a point when people find out a solution to this. But the time to find the right solution is taking longer and longer. So I agree with you. I don't know if it's gonna be 2 year, 5 year, or 10-year target, but I think we'll get there in time. I'm slightly more optimistic.
That's great. Yeah, that is definitely the sort of the target that is put out there by a lot of people, that they want, the pinnacle. And so I'm sure there's millions and millions of dollars and thousands of hours being poured into this across various companies trying to figure this out. But Leo, you made an amazing point, is it really worth passing that cost on if things double to get slightly more efficiency, or are we kind of great where we're at and making improvements that are a little bit less marginal, like 20%, but your costs double? Does that, does the math? It is sort of the question, right? So I think maybe there's other areas that we can improve on, and that's not one place that we need to stay stuck with all of our focus. So I think that was a great point regarding the costs, which a lot of people might not consider because they don't manufacture chips like you do at the scale that you do.
But that's also why how important it's getting increasingly important that heat recycling has becoming a more important part of running Bitcoin mining chips, like the ones we did in Canada, where people use them to generate hot water to run through their greenhouses to grow vegetables. I can tell you like 100 different use cases for hot water recycling. But I think, until recently, people weren't really treating them as a serious business. But I can see globally, a lot of people are using them on the industrial level. So that's really important. So for home, I think that the best way to recycle, heat and recycle electricity is still to through products like a home miner or a heating system. But for industrial level applications, you try to work with engineers who are spending time on site and trying to make blockchain technology emerged into the existing system, like the greenhouse, or like using hot water for residential heat or for industrial purposes. So I think there's a long way to go, but it's very important to think of it this way, and this is the where Canaan is trying to pivot into. Is that the Bitcoin mining will be less affected by Bitcoin prices, but more on the industrial application as a infrastructure that either provides heat recycling or provide the power grid balancing or rebalancing.
Right.
So it is interesting to see. We could never had imagined this 5 years ago.
Right. Yes, things are rapidly evolving in this industry, especially with the heat recapture side of things. And so before we move into the last section about the greenhouse, because I want to wrap up with the greenhouse as our sort of our final piece. But I wanted to, and you mentioned it sort of slightly here in passing about like the different cycles, right? The cyclic nature of Bitcoin. And so as a company, like that the miner margins are compressing when the halvings take place, right?
Yeah.
And so how are you guys at Canaan positioning your hardware pricing and financing of models to kind of keep smaller scale and independent miners viable as customers going forward as those things happen?
Green, you is it a question for me or for Green?
It's for you, Leo.
It's for me. So let me rephrase. So you're asking how can we help the small to medium sized miners to survive the Bitcoin winter, so to speak?
Yeah, pretty much. Like curious how the pricing will evolve in future, products and generations, so that it makes sense for people to mine at home when the profit margins are constantly compressing during bear markets and things like that.
Yeah. So the price of Bitcoin is something to do with the revenue or on-time revenue you receive from mining, right? The power price is about the cost you're gonna pay when you generate per unit Bitcoin. What we learned from the past is that over different bulls and bears, a lot of these mining sites and or solo mining operators that has very cheap power never had to turn off their mining facility, even though some of these mining equipment were outdated. So I would say it's more so today to have a very competitive power price is the key to success, right? The hardware part, which is the Bitcoin mining equipment, and I hate when I say it, it is less important in this spectrum. Like you need to buy the machines, but now the price of machines are very transparent. It's not like during COVID you couldn't even get a hand on a real machine, right? You got in intermediaries, you got agents who claim they have machines, and you pay and you never know if you could receive them. But that was during COVID. Today it's all very reachable. If you like machines, reach out to me, reach out to my sales forces. I can probably find a right salesperson for any order, any size order. And we have online shops, that people could buy several units from us directly, and it can be shipped from either our U.S. or Asian warehouses and directly to your door. So that is the part of how do you weigh in the cost of power and also the machine. And now when Bitcoin halving happens, the revenue side will be immediately cut in half. And that halving will hurt people when people invest into hardware, and they be invested life savings into hardware. Their machine will depreciate more because the revenue they receive, unfortunately, will be much less than when they started to purchase these machines. And that will have a direct impact on manufacturers as well, because people look at the economics and say, "Oh, it doesn't make me any money in the coming future. Why would I invest in hardware?" So that is how R&D came in and started to reduce people's capex on hardware equipment, because we spend a lot of hours and resources to make the more powerful machine and make them affordable for people. But you're right. There is a limit. We kind of talking about it for a while, that the hardware has its limit, and now we're trying to also involve another concept, which is the use of power as an alternative to offset your power bills. Say someone has a solar panel set up on a rooftop, and instead of resell the power back to the grid at 1/4 of the power they sell to you, you could use that power to generate the Bitcoin. People are less sensitive to that power prices. This is the reason why you see a lot of U.S. miners have started to pivot into AI HPC and reduce their hash rate, while the world's hash rate is still not decreasing like crazy, because more and more people, especially small to middle-sized miners, including homeowners, are putting hash rate to the grid. And we think this is actually better for Bitcoin as an asset class, because the core value of Bitcoin is decentralization. When you have more people in this industry mining from their home and from the small businesses, there are more nodes to consolidate this network. And it's very important to us as a true believer of decentralization. It might cost more work. It might be a little difficult to tap into. But I think this is the right future for us as someone who started this business in 2013.
Well said. And it's noble work. So if it causes more work, that's okay, because it's pure work, right? It's sometimes worth going to those greater lengths if you're doing something really meaningful like that. And so I really like what you said there, because I definitely am a huge fan of the idea of this alternative energy, solar. Instead of selling it back to the grid at a loss or for fractions of what it's worth, you channel that into Bitcoin mining, and then you're printing the hardest money that mankind has ever known. And so there's it's just going to continue developing in that vein as people get sick of fiat systems and centralized systems, and they trend more towards doing something for themselves with mining and solar and things like that.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I know you guys are probably needing to get back to work, so I wanted to just wrap up to talk to you about the Manitoba Greenhouse Project.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if one of you is more intimately familiar with that or not, but either of you feel free to jump in on this one. I would love if you could just walk us through some of the specifics of the Greenhouse Project, how it came to be and what inspired it, and what's the scale of it, and how's it going?
Green, you want to give a try? I realize I've been talking too much.
You never talk too much, Leo. You've talked the perfect amount. But yeah, so we're partnered with a company on a pilot project, a proof of concept up in Manitoba. And it's a greenhouse that's using, I think it's about 360 of our machines in containers, liquid cooled machines. So the water is being recycled through the greenhouse to warm the greenhouse in a Canadian winter, which I think is pretty exciting. You know, it's a tomato farm that's giving this a try. I think it's 3 megawatts currently. If there's if it's successful, I think we'll be able to take that and replicate it across their farm or in other locations. We think it's about 90% of the heat created is able to be reused, captured in the greenhouse. So it's, you know, it's pretty unusual, pretty novel opportunity. So, you know, we always look for ways to find new things to do with heat reuse. Because, you know, if you think about it, businesses are built on, you know, if you have a data center, for example, how do you spend millions and millions of dollars getting rid of heat? And
Yes.
then on the other hand, like your greenhouses, you spend tons of money trying to heat things up. So finally, you know, this is an example of how you can put the two together and become, you know, the world becomes more efficient. There's less fossil fuel burning. You know, it's a win for everyone.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be the biggest realization, let's call it, of this next decade or two, that we can use Bitcoin miners for such a wide variety of purposes, and that the heat is actually the product and the kind of killer application for so many different types of use cases. So that's exciting. And as somebody who's looking to start a small homestead one day, I know how important Bitcoin mining will be in that whole process, with whether it's with the animals, the chickens, or drying out fruits and foods and things like that, making beef jerky, as somebody in Finland is already doing with mining. There's just so many great applications, right? So did they come to you with this idea, or how did this come into existence?
Leo, do you know how it came to be? They came to us.
So
Did they not? Or
yeah, so our sales people are everywhere. So this is one of our customer leads. They did talk to us. Then we realized that was a very interesting project, you know, and we wanted to make it a proof of concept. So I guess it took a while, you know, like we have so many customization requirements from different places and on different criteria. I think we got to pick from one or two from the more promising ones. This is one of the promising ones. Interestingly, in the beginning, we thought this was such a small project, and we didn't put too much effort on it. But then our CEO found out, and he saw that this is very meaningful, so he kind of personally pushed it to realization.
I love that.
that's kind of the interesting thing about Canaan is that when I joined, one of our taglines is something to do about efficiency, and I kept thinking, why we make Bitcoin mining machines? Why are we? What do we mean efficiency? And you know, I knew they meant more than just the, you know, joules per terahash efficiency, and I couldn't really figure it out. And then, you know, with these consumer products and with these projects, you know, we also have another project where we're um, working with wellheads, where the natural gas would normally be burned and put out into the atmosphere. Instead, we're working with a partner to try to capture that. So, you know, all these efficiencies, you know, Bitcoin mining can really legitimately make the world more efficient in so many ways. And it's only limited by how many ideas you can come up with. And of course, you know, we can't do all of them. We don't have the resources to try everything, but we do, you know, look for opportunities to do things like this to really make the world a much more efficient place.
So social efficiency, that's what Green's talking about. So
That's fantastic because you know we hear so much in the early days about how Bitcoin mining is basically you know the devil and it's destroying the universe and the planet and you know all of this, but as you're so beautifully pointing out with pilot projects like this, you know, it's doing the exact opposite. And so I think that's a great demonstration of how it's actually benefiting the planet and the earth and, you know, food production and what that does for communities that consume that food. And so like it has an effect on the entire chain that it's involved in. So that's great. I'm really excited to see that. Hopefully you guys are able to put out content around that and marketing and really get lots of information out there specifically about the greenhouse project, because I would love to know more like about how much terahash they're running and all the things, all the data that they're able to come up with in working with you guys to produce sort of this first of its kind at this scale project.
Yeah, we'll
We'll
definitely
come back to you with more info.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, listen, Leo, Gwyn, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today and share these great insights. I want to leave it with each of you to sign off. If you have anything that you're really excited for this year, or any predictions, or anything that really is a passion for you right now, or anything that you just want to say about Canaan that you want to leave us with, please do.
Who starts first?
Let's
first,
let
Leo.
Gwyn. Let's let the lady
yay.
start first.
Thank you. So I'm excited about, I think in 2026, we're going to find a lot more ways to develop consumer products. I think we have a lot of really good ideas. Hopefully, a lot more of them make it to the market. We currently have 3 products. I think there's opportunity for more beyond just, space heating. We've talked about some other ways. So I'm excited to see we have an R&D team that's working really hard on coming up with ideas. So I'm really excited about where we're going with that. And I want to see where we end up in 2026.
And I think 26 is going to be a pivotal year for Canaan. We are on the one hand working very hard on the consumer products level pipeline, and also on the other hand trying to tap into energy and infrastructure of North America in a more meaningful way. I know in the past we kind of cooperated with partners who help us deploy our machines for cell mining, but I think we will have more meaningful ways to do this directly into the energy market. So I really want to thank you for taking us to this opportunity. And any questions from your audience, they're more than welcome to reach out to me or Gwyn, and also welcome them to visit our website and check out our updates. Thank you so much.
We'll
Leo,
see you next
Gwyn,
week at ePunk.
Been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. This has been another episode of the Home Mining Podcast with Gwyn and Leo of Canaan. Like and share the episode. Get this to a heat punk or a home miner in your life, and we'll see you in the next one.